Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to week 2 in the Way of Mastery. Hope your week 1 went well. I'm sure there's plenty of things to discuss and talk about later on when you get to share. So looking forward to that. So again, these are going to hopefully be about 10-minute videos for each one of the chapters. I'm going to cover a couple highlights that I thought were interesting and caught my attention. I hope you did as well, you do as well, but just understand there could be one sentence in here that I completely go past that it might change your whole world, your whole life. You just never know, right? All right, without further ado, I'm going to jump in right away. So again, this is just chapter 2. It's called You Create Your Experience in the Way of Mastery. I find it fascinating that in the second paragraph, it starts off with, I come not alone to communicate with you. There is, in truth, a host of friends that come to create a vortex, a circumference of energy. And then he says, we come, even as you read these words into your space that set that tone. It's interesting because in other parts of the book, he uses that same language, we, like there's a collective. And I find that fascinating because I'd never heard that before and something to pay attention to. So anyways, I found that interesting. Maybe you do too. The other thing in lesson 2 on the first page where it talks at the bottom of the page, when you arise in the morning, the first thought that makes you a home in your mind, you will act on. So as the saying goes, choose wisely, my friends. Be careful with those first thoughts when you wake up in the morning. I'm going to go to the second page. And halfway down the page, the paragraph that starts, therefore, beloved friends, and then he goes on to say, the beginning of this pathway is simply this. You are as God created you to be. You are an infinite focus of consciousness. So I just find that interesting in terms of a definition of who you are in terms of you're an infinite focus of consciousness. I would add the divine in there. Beautiful. At the bottom of the page, I love it when the affirmation I think is super, super, super powerful. I am pure spirit, undefiled and unaffected by anything or anyone. I am given full power to choose and therefore to create my experience as I would have it be. Beautiful, 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 right? I really like as he ramps up, he's starting to talk once again about responsibility and accepting full responsibility. That's the affirmation on page 13 in my book. And then there's a couple other affirmations on that page that are really, really good. Again, these are just things that you can read one time, or if you feel really drawn to them, you can use them as ongoing affirmations. So this is really, really good. For example, I am as God created me to be, made in his or her image. I am a creator always. Love it. Just absolutely, 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 absolutely love it. Okay, I'm going to go on to the next page where Hathaway, and this just information starts getting really rich, right? So it's like, look, if you saw my, well, I can't, it won't show it to you, but I'd show you my book page. But I mean, like the whole thing's highlighted, right? So it's kind of like, oh my God, this is just so good. It's starting to get really good right away, really quick. For me, it was anyways. And again, it's okay if it's not for you. Like maybe it's taken a minute for it to settle in, would not surprise me. So don't worry if it doesn't jump off the page at you right away. Just be patient, give yourself some time, give spirit some time to start working with it. But anyways, down in the third paragraph, I really love this idea or concept of being in or out of alignment. In alignment with what? With what? Remember when we were talking about the two minds, the Christ mind and the egoic mind? Which one are you in alignment with? So it talks about this idea in the third paragraph. It says, rather, it is a pathway in which you learn to transcend and to dissolve from your consciousness every perception, every thought, which is out of alignment with what is true. And then it goes on to say what they are. The thought of death is out of alignment. The thought of fear is out of alignment. The thought of guilt is out of alignment. However, He goes on to say, the thought of eternal life is in alignment. The thought of perfect fearlessness is in alignment. Perfect fearlessness. My God, so good. The thought of peace is in alignment. The realization of innocence, we're going to talk about that in a minute, is in alignment. The thoughts of joy and forgiveness are in alignment. So it talks about this idea of being in alignment when you're thinking thoughts that are in alignment with the Christ mind. My experience is when I do that, there's a very, very, very powerful feeling. Like I know I'm thinking the right thoughts versus I can tell when I'm thinking egoic thoughts because my energy shifts. I can literally feel it. Can you? Maybe you can, maybe you can't. All right. I think it's interesting on the next page, which is page 15 for me. The idea of failure. I love this. Therefore, if what you create is not up to snuff, it means that you in the core of your beingness are some kind of failure. Deep down at our core. And for me, that was certainly true for a long time. I believed that there was something wrong with me, that I was flawed, that I was some kind of failure. But I say unto you, in reality, failure is not even remotely possible. I love that. And he goes on to explain that. The only failure seems to occur within your own consciousness when you believe that it is not acceptable to receive and own and embrace your creation. In other words, whatever is going on in your life, own it. What does he say? Receive it, own it, and embrace it with love and with innocence. He's going to continuously talk about innocence. Not judgment, not shame, not guilt, not blame, innocence. Like this happened. This is here. I'm accepting you innocently, childlike, as a matter of fact. Instead, you can choose to look upon it, to experience it, and to recognize your perfect safety in doing so, for it is from there that you can decide whether to continue that in the form of creation or, so in other words, keep doing what you're doing. That's what you want to. But you've got to be able to look at through the eyes of innocence without judgment, condemnation, all the stuff that we normally do, judgment, all of those kinds of fun things. Or we can decide to think differently and to approach things differently. So he goes on to talk about that a little bit more. And I think that's really, really cool and really, really super powerful. I didn't take a lot away from page 16. Maybe you did. If you did, then share that with the group when you get to it. And as I go to the next page in page 17, this is where it starts to really tug at my heartstrings, because it talks about this idea of mastery arises from innocence. And then at the very bottom of the page, it says, the cultivation of the way of the heart is the pathway whereby you deliberately and consciously choose to begin again as an innocent child. And to me, that was such a hard thing to start to wrap my mind around, that I had to look at myself through the eyes of innocence. No shame, no blame, no guilt, no judgment, no right or wrong. Looking at myself as an innocent child. And it's so funny because when I think about looking at a child, my heart, I'm a parent. And when I saw my children, when I see my children, I mean, there was such a pure expression because I knew they were so innocent. And there was never a judgment because I knew how innocent they were. And that was like, well, geez, Mike, it's sure interesting that you can do that to another being. But why can't you do that for yourself? And that took me quite a while to work through, because I was never felt like when I was younger, looked through as the eyes of innocence. In fact, I was looked at through the eyes of everything but innocence. And so it took me a while to be able to get that concept through my head, that the truth is I'm innocent. Like I'm just trying to figure it out like everybody else is. I'm doing the best I can, just like everybody else is. And sometimes I'm going to make a mistake and not do things right, but that doesn't mean there's shame, blame, or guilt. Is there some responsibility? Of course there is. Sure. But does it mean getting up and judging myself so mercilessly that I can't get on with life and move forward, which is something I had a very difficult time doing earlier in my life. And so the idea, this concept is going to be repeated over and over and over again, is to be looking at yourself through the eyes of innocence. As an innocent child, we are all innocent children in the eyes of God. I think that is really beautiful. So on the next page, page 18, it talks about down in the third paragraph, you have a saying in your world, it is what it is. And that is, deliberately decide to accept wholly that what you are experiencing in this very moment has no cause whatsoever except your choice to experience it. Oh man, here comes this idea of the spiritual principles again, the spiritual maturity. That might take a minute to kind of look at, to when you realize that there's no cause other than how you choose to experience something. It's hard to separate being caught up in a moment that's not easy, that's difficult, and realize that it's your choice on how you want to experience it. And so that's like a little bit of a deeper concept, maybe something we could talk about at another time. But I used to give this analogy of, you have two people that are working at a job, and all of a sudden the boss comes in and says, hey, guess what? I got some news. Like, we're laying people off. One person, so you got two people, same exact circumstance. One person looks at it and goes, oh my God, you know what? This is a dead end job. I haven't been happy here for years. I've just been too lazy to get up off my butt. This is finally giving me an opportunity to go get a job. Thank you. Like, it's time. The other person looks at it and says, this is the worst day of my life. How am I going to pay my bills? How am I going to pay a mortgage? I'm never going to be able to get another job. What kind of a mindset do you think that person has? What kind of an experience do you think they have moving forward? Same exact situation, two different responses. And you know what the difference is? Choice. How do you choose to perceive it? One's looking at it from, thank God, I get to do something new. The other one is, oh my God, what am I going to do now? Huge difference. Same exact thing, two different mindsets, right? So at the bottom of page 18, here's where we're going to start getting involved with the practices. So I mentioned getting a journal. I mentioned starting to make some notes in each of the sections. I also meant to mention this, I forgot to, when I was explaining to you the idea about the journal, and that is, I would suggest making a separate section, one section that has all the exercises. Now, you don't have to, if you want to keep the exercises in lesson 1, here's the exercises, lesson 2. But what I'm going to tell you is going to start happening is these exercises in these chapters are going to start stacking up. And you're going to have to go back into each chapter to figure out what were the exercises I was supposed to be working on and for how long. Whereas if you just had them in one section called exercises, makes it a little bit easier, right? All right. So at the bottom of the page, this is basically an exercise that talks about practice this thing for, it sounds like the every hour for 5 minutes. And that is this idea. I'm sorry, I'm hesitating because I think there's a couple different notes I have in here. So we'll straighten this up if we need to, but maybe you could clarify this on the thing. But here's what it talks about, because somewhere it talks about going back in and doing this and accepting wholly, saying something along the lines of, this is my only experience and it's good. And it says, so it talks about doing this for every single hour for about 3 to 5 minutes long. And that's where the first place it describes this. Yeah, so it does on the next page. It says, set the intention that in each hour of your day for 3 to 5 minutes, you practice bringing the quality of awareness. So in this case, it's more of an awareness practice is what it's called. So it's an awareness practice where you're spending 3 to 5 minutes each hour. Don't get caught up with the each hour thing. Do the best you can. Or maybe you decide, listen, I'm going to go through this thing this year and I'm not going to do the exercises. There's no judgment. Let it go. I would probably say, consider going somewhere in the middle, right? Every hour, 3 to 5 minutes, just becoming aware, stopping. Hey, look what I just created. Wow, check it out. And then he's going to add this thought or this idea that where you say, hey, this is good. We'll talk about that in a minute, okay? The other thing is there's another exercise at the bottom of page 19. where he talks about this idea is take out a piece of paper, and on a piece of paper, write down the following: ought, should, must, and have to. And then guess what you get to do? Burn it. Go put it outside, do a little ceremony, light that, and let it go. So we're letting go of this idea of these ought to, should, must have, blah, 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 because in truth, there are none of those. There are none. And so he has you go through an exercise where you go and you basically burn it, right? And then this idea of I need do nothing. And that's where they come up with. So, all right. So this is where there's a little bit of confusion in my mind from a practice standpoint, because he just told us, all right, spend 3 to 5 minutes, an hour. And then I think there's this kind of like a repeating thing. So this, or no, it's not. This is a second exercise. So I'm sorry. Again, I'm bouncing back and forth. Forgive me. But this is actually something to do once in the morning and once at night. So we've got the every hour, 3 to 5 minutes. You're just becoming aware. Hey, check out what I created. Like for me, I'm sitting there going, hey, check out, I'm making a video. Hey, the sun is setting. That's beautiful. Hey, I'm looking at the trees. Wow, that's cool. Right? So I'm doing that. Now, the second thing I'm doing is I do this morning and at night, and that is just doing an affirmation. I am created as a father, mother, God created me to be. I am free, and nothing sources my experience but me in each moment. Nothing has an effect upon me whatsoever, save that which I choose to allow it to affect me. So you're saying that in the morning, you're saying that at night, right? The last thing that he talks about is the second axiom, if you will. And then at the end of that other affirmation on the next page, it says, I need do nothing, just it adds on to it. Okay. Then on the last at the bottom of page 21 is the second axiom, if you will, and that is practicing once a day to look at anything that's going on and just saying it is good. This concept, this idea is going to start landing as we go throughout the book. But it's this idea of thinking that whatever you're creating, you're just acknowledging it's good, because it's just starting to understand that you are a powerful creator and you have the ability to create. And when you pause for a minute and you say, this is good, there's like an acceptance, like, yeah, I'm creating this, I'm creating this, I'm creating this. And we're gonna be hammering this concept as we go through this book. In other words, we are co-creators with the divine, right? And if you think about it, for those of you that have read the Bible, at the very end of the creations, God said, this is good. I find that interesting that this is basically brought up here as well. So God, at the end, on the 6th day, I think he says, and he looked at this and he said, this is good. So I find that to be interesting. All right. So what do we have? Basically, as I wrap up this chapter in this tight little nutshell, there's a lot of stuff in here. It's really beautiful. We start the practices. We've got every hour, 3 to 5 minutes, an awareness practice. Every morning and every night, we have an affirmation. And then one time during the day, when you're doing your awareness, just look at something, whatever the creation is. I don't care what it is. If it feels good or if it feels bad, it doesn't matter. This is good. That's all you're doing. This is good. Ah, I'm making a video. This is good. Right? Kind of do that. Right? Awesome. That's it. So I hope that was good. I hope it's helpful. I hope it inspires conversation. I'm sure there's much more in there, and I can't wait to hear what you have to say about it as well. Enjoy. And I'm probably going to poke in and see you on a couple of the meetings. So I hope you have fun with this. Remember, keep it light, keep it easy. If it's getting too serious or too heavy, you're not doing it right. Okay. It's supposed to be light and simple. Invite your spirits and your guides and everybody to join you in with this process, by the way. Anyways, I love you and I hope you have a great rest of your day and enjoy the classes. Okay. Take care. Blessings. Bye-bye.